Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to the Explainer. Today, I'm basically acting as your study buddy to map out the master keys of Christian moral principles. If you're looking to absolutely ace your upcoming exam on this topic, well, you are in the perfect place. We're going to take all those dense, complex scriptures and transform them into a really clear, easy-to-recall narrative that will give you exactly what you need for those high-mark essays. We've got a great lineup today. We'll be hitting the foundation of love, God's love as a model, living the truth, conscience versus forgiveness, a master revision cheat sheet, and finally, your final evaluation. Let's get right to it. Section 1, the foundation of love. This is your ultimate baseline. You see, when Jesus was challenged by the religious leaders to name the greatest commandment, he didn't just invent something completely out of thin air. He actually brought together two huge existing Old Testament laws, loving God with all your heart, which comes from Deuteronomy, and loving your neighbor as yourself, from Leviticus. This establishes love of God and neighbor as the absolute baseline. In Christian ethics, you literally cannot separate the two. So a lawyer tries to test Jesus, right? He asks, okay, but who exactly is my neighbor? And Jesus responds with the famous parable of the Good Samaritan. First, a guy is beaten by robbers and left for dead. Second, the religious elites, a priest and a Levite, completely ignore him and walk right by on the other side of the road. Finally, a Samaritan, who the Jewish audience would have totally viewed as a hostile outsider, is the one who actively steps up, administers first aid, and pays for the man's ongoing care. The core takeaway here is a massive, radical redefinition of community. In this worldview, your neighbor isn't just the person who happens to live next door. It includes absolutely everyone you cross paths with on life's journey, whether they're your best friend or your worst enemy. To love God with all your heart means recognizing everyone as part of His creation. Because of that, their needs deserve to be treated just as highly as your own. It's a huge imperative. Moving right along to Section 2, God's love as the model. Think of this as the divine blueprint. This passage from Exodus is fascinating because it explicitly defines God's traits, straight from God describing Himself to Moses. Look at the incredible balance here. He's merciful and gracious, giving humanity what it doesn't deserve. He's patient, overflowing with steadfast love, and fiercely forgiving. But wait, how does all that balance with justice? Well, the text explicitly notes He will not clear the guilty. There's this profound balance where immense, unyielding love is deeply intertwined with strict justice. Fast forward to the New Testament, and John takes this idea and turns it all the way up. The logic here is inescapable. John insists that it's fundamentally impossible to love God without also loving other people. If someone claims to love God but hates their brother, John flat out calls them a liar. And it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? If you can't love the human being standing right in front of you, you certainly can't love an invisible God. True devotion demands visible love for humanity. All right, Section 3, Living the Truth. It's time to talk about the new self. Historically, Christians have considered themselves guardians of the truth, which they view as the ultimate meaning of existence. Back in the Old Testament, the Israelites served God because He famously busted them out of slavery in Egypt. Well, for Christians, the New Testament equivalent is that Jesus freed humanity from the captivity of sin and death. In recognition of that ultimate freedom, believers are challenged to ditch their old, corrupt habits and put on a brand new self, rooted in righteousness. So, what does this new self actually look like on a random Tuesday? Paul lays out some highly practical ground rules in Ephesians. Put away the lies, speak the truth, sure. But look at his advice on anger. Paul completely acknowledges that feeling angry is a totally normal human emotion. It's okay to be mad when you see an injustice or get betrayed. But he says you cannot let it fester. Letting your anger simmer overnight is like leaving the front door wide open for the devil. Which brings us to Section 4, Conscience versus Forgiveness. The internal clash with the external. This is absolute gold for your exam essays. You have this constant, beautiful tension between realizing your own failures and wiping the slate clean for everyone else. Internally, you have your conscience, your innate sense of right and wrong. It's an internal compass that triggers guilt when you ignore it. But externally, that's forgiveness. While your conscience weighs your own mess-ups, forgiveness is how you handle the mess-ups of others. It's an external reset, a conscious choice to let go. Now, a quick warning about that internal compass. It is not foolproof. If you repeatedly ignore your conscience, it actually becomes dangerously desensitized. You go morally numb. On the flip side, a conscience can also become way too sensitive, beating you up over totally normal human mistakes and giving you false guilt. That's why the ultimate goal here is maturity, constantly calibrating that compass against biblical teaching so it stays accurate. And let's be real about the external side. Forgiveness is tough. People who have been wronged don't just naturally overflow with mercy. When Peter asked Jesus if he should forgive someone 7 times, Jesus basically said, no, try 77 times, implying a lifetime of it. Why? Because Jesus directly tied God's forgiveness of us to our forgiveness of others. It is a highly conscious, deliberate choice that ultimately sets the believer free from all that festering anger we talked about earlier. Okay, Section 5, the Master Revision Table. This is the ultimate cheat sheet. You are definitely going to want to mentally bookmark this one. It brilliantly maps every single moral principle straight to the exact biblical evidence the examiners are hunting for. Writing about love of neighbor? Boom, hit them with Leviticus and Luke. Discussing God's love as a model? You need Exodus and 1 John. Back up regard for truth with Samuel and Ephesians. Anchor conscience with Corinthians and Timothy, and seal forgiveness with Matthew and Colossians. Lock down these pairs, and your evidence base will be absolutely bulletproof. Finally, Section 6, the final evaluation. Time for the core question. This right here is the ultimate issue you need to be ready to evaluate. Based on everything we've just unpacked together, how would you argue this in your final essay? Is loving your neighbor truly the single most important principle? Think about how it connects to the requirement to forgive. Think about how it mirrors God's own character. Could any of the other principles even exist without it? Take these tools, take these concepts, and go build a knockout argument. Good luck on the exam, and keep digging into the material.